Hi, so this is another chapter video that I'm going to teach you what is the transport in humans and animals. So this is the chapter I get from the Form 4 syllabus chapter 10, and the words transport already tells you that actually you're going to learn what is the transport system in humans and also animals. So I'm very sad to tell you that this chapter is quite long and complicated, but I hope you can still bear with me until the end of the chapter. So not only we are going to study the transport system in humans, but we also need to study the transport system in animals such as the fish, insects, amphibians, so on and so forth. So let's go through the chapter content one by one. So I think in this video I will just first focus on chapter 10.1, which is the types of the circulatory system. So first of all, we need to justify the necessity of transport system in complex organisms. And then next, we also need to identify what are the substances that are transported by our transport system, like nutrients. We need to transport the nutrients to all parts of our bodies in order to get the nutrients, and also at the same time the living cells will also excrete some waste products such as the carbon dioxide, the urea, and toxins, so on and so forth. And this kind of waste products we need to get it out of our body so that our survival will still also maintain. Actually, these all systems are very important just for our survival, for organism survival. Next, we're also going to learn there are actually two types of the circulatory system in the complex multicellular organisms. For your information, multicellular organisms are the organisms which consist of more than one types of cells. So like insects, fish, humans and plants are all the multicellular organisms. So unicellular organisms like the bacteria, the microorganisms, all those are referred to the actually simple living organisms. So their transport system is kind of different with the complex multicellular organism. So as what I mentioned just now, we have two types of the circulatory system in the complex organism, which is first one, the open circulatory system and closed circulatory system. So we are going to look for what are the similarities and differences for these two circulatory systems. Yes, and then after we study for the circulatory system in the complex organisms such as the insects, fish, amphibians, and humans, we are also going to look for the similarities and differences. So let's get started. So 10.1 types of circulatory system. We are just going to learn what are the types and how many types are there for the circulatory system. So first of all, we need to identify what is the necessity for transport system in the complex multicellular organisms. So first of all, you will need to ask yourself, why we need this transport system in multicellular organisms. So first, every living cell that requires the essential substances such as the oxygen, the nutrients, and expels the cellular waste products such as carbon dioxide and nitrogenous waste. So the examples of nitrogenous waste is the urea. So in chapter 2, so in my previous video I also already made some videos for chapter 2, and we already learned that unicellular microorganisms such as the amoeba species, they get their essentials and expels the waste by simple diffusion to its external surrounding. The reason why amoeba species and paramecium species can get their essentials and get rid of the waste so easily is because they have a small body mass. as you know, we cannot see the unicellular organisms because their body size are just too small. So in order to see, to make it visible, we need to use the microscope to observe it. Therefore, when the body mass are very small, it means that the total surface area to volume ratio is very large. So first, the relationship between, I'm going to highlight a relationship between the body mass and the TSA per volume ratio. So let's say if the body mass is very high, so your TSA per V ratio will be very low. So they are actually inversely proportional. For example, when the body mass is very small, so your TSA per V ratio will getting higher, or we say larger. That's why the reason why amoeba species does not require a special transport system is because they have a very small body mass, or even we can say it has a very high or large TSA per V ratio. Therefore, it does not need to have the transport system to help it to get the nutrients, because the nutrients can easily just get into the body of the amoeba species and the paramecium species. So next, this is the questions that we are going to find for the answer. So since we already understand the transport system in unicellular organisms is just very simple, which they rely on the simple diffusions to get the nutrients, then what happens to the multicellular organisms? Can the multicellular organisms obtain the essential substances and expel the waste by simple diffusion like the unicellular organisms? Okay, so the answer is over here. The large, complex, multicellular organisms, first, they cannot obtain the essential substances and expel the waste by diffusion because their TSA per V ratio is small. So imagine human, tigers, plants, big trees, they are all very huge. That's why they have a very small TSA per V ratio. So the distance between the external environment and the cell is too far for the direct substance exchange. It is not like the amoeba species and paramecium species, which are only one cell body size, which they can get easily the substances, the useful substances. That's why in multicellular organisms, we have this specialized transport system in order to help them to get the substance, to get the useful and nutrients substances and expel the waste product. So as just what I mentioned just now, this is just the image. This is the image for the unicellular organism. Since they are just a one cell, yes, this is just a one cell, even though the diagram is big. So the nutrients can easily get into the body of the microorganisms and expel out the waste very easily. But you need to know that this is the substance exchange for multicellular organisms. So you can see that this is actually like, this is our skin layer, and then go deeper and deeper is our body cells, adipose tissue, so on and so forth. And then this white area is the external environment. So you can observe that actually in order to let the nutrients in the environments to get into the cell, it is a very large, or we say long distance. That's why the substance exchange cannot occur by the diffusion, because the cells are kind of too far away from the environment. Yes, so this is the basic idea for what is the necessity for transport system in the complex organisms. So first, this is the answer, and then the second one is the Okay, so this is the first answer and that one is the second answer. Okay, so yes, just like what I mentioned just now, multicellular organisms, they will have the internal transportation system. So in vertebrates, meaning the animals that with backbones, the transportation is actually what we call blood circulatory system. So vertebrate is the animals that with backbone, which is the spinal cord. So the transportation is actually just the blood circulatory system. They are the same thing. Okay. So next, go for the types of circulatory system in multicellular organisms. So first of all, the circulatory system in multicellular organisms have the open circulatory system and the closed circulatory system. So the first system we name it as the open circulatory system, and the second system we name it as the closed circulatory system. So let's go with what is the open circulatory system. Okay, in an open circulatory system, the hemolymph flows directly. This is the keyword. It flows directly into the body cavity, the hemocoel, and bathe the cell. So for your information, hemolymph is just like a blood-like nutritious liquid found in most invertebrates such as the insects and mollusks. So mollusca is something, the examples includes the snail, the slugs, those that with hard shell, those animals that with hard shell. Okay, so you can imagine this hemolymph is just like the blood in the multicellular organisms like human. It is a blood-like nutritious liquid. That's why I call it as like I ask you to imagine it as a blood, because blood contains the nutrients and also can contain some waste. So while I'm teaching, so you can also do your own notes to make you more understand. So the body cavity, which is we can imagine it as, assume it as the body cells. In the open circulatory system, we call the body cells, the body parts, the body cavity as the hemocoel. So this hemolymph is just directly above the cell. It directly contact with the cell. So just like this diagram, so this is actually the hemolymph vessel, and this is the heart. So these are just the hemolymph, and they will just directly in contact with every single cell in here, and then after the exchange of gases such as the exchange of nutrients, waste, and then this hemolymph will continue to flow back to the heart, and then the cycle will just get repeats. Okay, so next we're going to go and look at what is meant by the closed circulatory system. So first of all, in closed circulatory system, we need to know why one is open, why another one is closed. This is actually refers to the blood. So when we say that this is a closed circulatory system, it means that this blood is always contained in a continuous closed blood vessels and is distributed to the whole body. Simply, it just means that like in closed circulatory system, we have the blood vessel. In the blood vessels, we have the blood, isn't it? So this blood is always flow in the blood vessel. It does not contact with the body cells directly. So the exchange of the substances that are essential to cells such as oxygen and nutrients occurs across the walls of the blood capillaries. That's why they need these blood capillaries to aid substances exchange. To aid exchange, or we say to help exchange nutrients and waste. Yeah. So just look at this diagram. So this is the heart. Okay, so this is the heart, and then we have the blood. So this blood will start to flow in the blood vessel. It does not go out of the blood capillary, and then once it enters and it encounters the body cell, the diffusion will occur over like things like here, and then the cells will get the nutrients, and at the same time it will excrete the waste, or we say expel the waste products into the blood vessel. So the area that going out is actually the nutrients going out, and then the cell give back the blood, the waste product. So this is how the exchange of substances occurs in the closed circulatory system. So for and one more thing I want to emphasize for open circulatory system is like they have no, I don't know whether you notice or not, they have no blood vessels. As what I mentioned just now, I didn't mention the words blood vessels, so it means that that's why it is called open circulatory system, because the blood is just directly above the cells, direct contact with the cell. But in human, we have the blood vessels. Okay, so next, circulatory system. Let's look at the open circulatory system. So for information, insects, the circulatory system in insects is open. Yeah, they are just open. So the circulatory system of insects is a open circulatory system. This means that one or more hearts pump the hemolymph, which is the blood, through the blood vessels into the hemocoel. So hemolymph is just like the blood. As what I mentioned, you can imagine it as the blood. But remember, during your exam, you need to write hemolymph, okay? Don't write blood. So this hemolymph will flow out of the heart into the hemocoel when the heart contracts. So in the hemocoel, the substance exchange between the hemolymph and body cells occur through diffusion. Okay, this you need to highlight. Substance exchange between the hemolymph and the body cell occurs through the diffusion. So when the heart relaxes, the hemolymph will flow back into the heart through the tiny openings called the osseum. So I just need you to remember several things. Okay, for circulatory system of insect, you need to remember that the first thing, they have the hemolymph. This is the short notes that you can do. Hemolymph and hemocoel. And then the second thing is you need to know the exchange of substances occur by diffusion. Okay, diffusion is the most important and most simple transportation method that happen in every living organisms, no matter it is a unicellular organisms or a multicellular organisms. And then the third thing I want you to remember is that the tiny opening, we call it as osseum. So I just need you to remember these three important things for the open circulatory system, just for the insects. So next, we are going to look at the circulatory system of fish. So for information, fish is having the closed circulatory system. Okay. First of all, the heart of the fish, it has two chambers. It means that it means that this fish has a atrium and a ventricle. Next, the blood that leaves the ventricle is pumped to the gill capillaries to enable the gaseous exchange. The gill capillaries carry the blood to the blood vessels that transport the oxygenated blood to the systemic capillaries. Okay, we highlight these systemic capillaries. In the systemic capillaries, oxygen diffuses into the tissue, so the carbon dioxide will diffuse out from the tissue into the capillaries, and then the deoxygenated blood is then returned to the heart atrium through the veins. As the blood flows in one direction, the fish circulatory system is known as a single circulatory system because the blood flows in one direction. That's why it is the single circulatory system. Okay, for information, systemic capillary means it only transports the blood with oxygen. Okay, this is the meaning of systemic. So if today I say pulmonary capillary, it is referred to the blood with no oxygen, pulmonary artery. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the reason why the insect it does not have the blood vessel is because they are really so insects are usually small in body size, so that's why they does not need the blood vessels to help for the transportation. The body are just very small, so they still can use the simple diffusion to allow the exchange of substances such as the nutrients and the waste with the body cells. So the body of the insect has many this ostium, which is the small, just like the arrow over here. They are the tiny openings that allow the gas to enter. That's why they can use simple diffusion to get the substances that they need. Meanwhile, for this diagram, it is the blood circulatory system of fish. So this is the diagram where this is the heart, and then this is the oxygenated blood. After it goes to the gill capillary where the gases exchange occur. So this blue blood, which is meant by the deoxygenated blood, that is the blood with no oxygen, they will get back to the oxygen blood again. They will get refilled by the oxygen, and then the blood will continue to flow until it reaches the systemic capillaries where it needs to transport the oxygen to the body cell. So after the blood has been supplied the oxygen to the body cell, it will have no oxygen, right? Just like the blue blood over here. Then it will go back to the heart and then get refilled by the oxygen again. So this is the cycle. So I hope you understand with this simple concept. If you still not understand, or maybe I talk too fast, so you can replay back the video until you understand.